young person, you hear stories of how people who follow their passion end up never having to work another day in their lives. Famous people like Steve Jobs give commencement speeches about following your passion and loving what you do. Well, today wanted to talk about why you should not follow your passion. And you might be thinking, well, why is this so? Today, I wanted to share with you a different perspective on following your passion and instead looking at skill building. Why? Why is that so? When I work with many young people, the first thing they tell me is, I don't know what my passion is. And they keep saying that. And after a while, it gets very, very discouraging because when you don't know what you love or you don't know what you're interested in, or it seems like you're interested in so many things, then you start thinking, well, is there something that I am actually good at? Is there something that I can do? And many young people, they come to this point where they start having to choose their university degrees, when they start having to think about a choice for their career, and they think to themselves, I can't possibly commit to something that I don't love for the rest of my life. And that is very scary, of course. I mean, when you've only lived for 20 years, you think that following your passion seems to be the most thoughtful thing you can do for yourself. Because after all, why you want to do something that you hate? Why you want to drag yourself to your work every day? You want to do something that you really love. And that's where passion comes in. We make the passion hypothesis as a basis for loving our work, to be able to choose our work. Well, maybe that isn't the right choice, and today I want to share with you why. Well, the first reason is passions move. Passion is based on emotion. Your emotions are going to change and it's going to fluctuate over the course of your life. You're not always going to like the same thing, love the same thing with the same passion. But if you depend on that, then you are not going to succeed. Secondly, you love things that you're good at. So instead of just looking at passion, it's useful to look at both passion and what you're purposed for or what you're good at. So passion and skill rather than just taking the passion lens alone. If you look at this, passion is associated with emotion. You're not always going to wake up loving your work every single day. So what happens? Do you end up quitting your job just because today I woke up without passion? No, that is not the case, definitely. You learn to stick through thick and thin with your skills, not against your skills, but with your skills. And so, if we take the dual lens of skill and passion, interest, and what you're good at, then we start looking at how you can grow it. This is a story of my speaking skill. As you can see, when I first grew up, I was a very unconfident, shy boy. So one afternoon, a teacher told me, John, tomorrow you're going to speak in front of the whole school, and I want you to write an essay about transportation. As an 8-year-old boy, I got my auntie to work with me through the night to write that essay. And when I stood up on that stage that night, all I could do was tremble and shake as I looked down at my paper for the 5 minutes that I read that essay. It wasn't good at all. But over the years, I've realized something. Before you get good at something, you're going to suck. And so you have to stick through the suck. No one became good overnight. And if you really love something, you will love it more if you like it and you are good at it. My speaking skill was really bad. Whenever I stood up to speak, people would laugh. People would point out my grammatical mistakes as they were speaking beside me. I would hear the audiences laughing the moment I stood up. It was almost as if I was a joke. And it was really difficult. And if I had stuck to my passion or what I loved, I would never have been good at speaking. You see, this is a picture of my students in class. And when I spoke in front of them, this was what they wrote. Crab King. Or the king of feces. That was a nice way to put of it. When I went to the toilet, this is what they wrote on the board. Again, it does show you what my students thought of my speaking. Well, if I had stuck to my passion or to my love, I would have quitted at that point because there was just no point. No point persevering in something where people didn't like you for, where people didn't care about, and where it seemed like only you cared about developing it. And so over the years, I stuck with speaking, fortunately. And despite the lows, I managed to become better at it. Let's compare this to my passion in cooking. I was so passionate about cooking that I actually wanted to stop university and go for a course and a degree and a diploma in cooking. Well, this was what I cooked. And you can clearly see that I wasn't very good at cooking. You see, the difference between my skill in speaking and my skill in cooking was not because I didn't have a natural flair for cooking. Well, I didn't know. But it was because with speaking, I deliberately and intentionally developed it. And over time, I started to love it. Starting with your love or your passion is a useful point to discover your eventual calling and vocation. But beyond discovering your love, you need to stick with your love. And therefore, passion is not just a momentary attraction, it is actually a commitment. And that is why passion evolves into skill. But today you might have a skill that you're particularly good at, and you don't find yourself loving it. What do you do then? Stick with it. Stick with it simply because you can't always expect yourself to love hard training. The love and emotion comes later. If you were always listening to your emotion today, you would be dead. You never get good at anything because the moment something gets hard, you tell yourself, I'm going to quit. Right? Passion takes grit as well. It takes perseverance. You see, skills grow. And if you look at this graph from Angela Duckworth in her book, Grit, it shows how world-class experts become world-class experts. Today, you might experience a plateau in your skill development. And there is an intentional process where we'll share about later where you deliberately practice and grow your skill. And so the key word here is deliberate. Skills grow by intention and not by accident. So the first myth often I hear is that I have no skills. It's not that you have no skills, you don't know your skills. There are two types of skills, generic and technical skills. So here you can see the skills future framework in Singapore used for a skill job like social work. So in this particular vocation, you'll see the technical skills like advocacy and planning, casework, and then the generic skills like communication. Then, so the first thing that you need to understand is what your skills are. So in this example, the generic skills that are transferable across different sectors are things like communication, interpersonal skills, customer service. But the more technical skills are more related to the specific vocation. So for example, casework management, casework planning, counseling are specific to the specific job of social work. And today in your own vocation, look at the generic and technical skills that you have and know them. But what if you're just starting out and you don't know your skills? Then write down 7 achievements, 7 stories of how you've achieved a success. And it can be something simple. It can be organizing an event for your class reunion. And as you look at that particular event that you organize, what were some challenges and how do you resolve those challenges? And as you write down these 7 stories, Richard Boles, who introduced this exercise in his book, What Color is Your Parachute?, talks about how you start to pick up common themes of skills with data, with people, and with things. Secondly, you might think that skills are not as important as passion. Well, you're wrong, because Cal Newport writes that you need to get good before you get good work. And that's true. Whilst passion is important, it is your skills that will anchor you over time. Because you can't sell your passion. You can sell your skills. And people buy the skills that you bring to the organization. They don't buy your emotion. They buy your skills. Lastly, you might say, my skills are not that important. After all, I'm not an Olympic athlete, or I'm not an Olympiad, or a genius. And you might say, oh, my skills can't be that great. Well, it's not the specific skill that you have, but it's the mix of skill. Let me say this again because it's important. It's not the specific skill you have, but it's the mix of skill that you have. Let's look at my own mix in speaking, teaching, and writing. In this particular mix of skills, not many people have it. And that's what makes me special. And today you might ask yourself, well, what is your own specific mix of skills? And that involves you examining your own flywheel and creating it. The flywheel is a concept created by Jim Collins in his book, Good to Great. And in his book, Turning the Flywheel, he explains more about how you can discover that. If you're not familiar with the flywheel, it's basically a piece of farm machinery that gathers momentum as you turn more and more of it. And slowly, it will gather momentum of its own and suddenly start spinning. But the point is that you need to first know what the factors are that contribute to your own flywheel so that you can constantly churn and turn the flywheel and eventually create a self-sustaining momentum that will drive you towards the greatest skill that you ever have. And in Jim Collins' book, he talks about how you first list out significant replicable successes that you've had. And then after that, look at failures that you've had. After that, compare the different failures and successes and ask yourself what the lessons learned from them. And after that, you can start creating your own flywheel. And in creating your own flywheel, you need to put down different factors. And you need to be sure about what comes first and what comes next. You need to be clear about why the order is as it is, rather than just inserting random things in different orders just because it looks like it. And if you look at an example of Amazon, their flywheel is clear: lower price offerings leading to increased customer visits, and then attracting third-party sellers, extending the store, distribution, grow revenue per fixed cost. And as they get on this flywheel, there is a virtuous loop. And over time, you see them developing into the trillion-dollar company that they are today. And if you look at my own personal flywheel, this is what I gathered. Speaking on more platforms, then writing for more articles or journals, teaching at more institutions, and then coaching more people. Eventually, this allowed me to build greater and greater expertise in my 3 core skills. Well, you might be asking today, so how do I grow my flywheel? Right, the first important aspect is to reflect on your skills. And this series of 5 questions are things that you can ask yourself and look at what brings you joy and happiness. And so it becomes a good reflective exercise where you write about what you're good at, what you're interested in, and begin to discover how you can know more of the skills that you already have. And then after that, establishing the baseline. Knowing where your skill level is at now allows you to grow them more intentionally. And that starts with videoing yourself. For me, that is the easiest way to actually figure out where you're at. And many people are uncomfortable with that. Lastly, invest in your skill. In Eduardo's TED Talk, he talks about how we transit between the learning zone and the performance zone. So you need to ask yourself, how do you learn, right? There are 4 different ways I wanted to recommend today. First one is books, courses, then coaching, and then having a community. This series of actions you take help you to grow in your knowledge, because without knowledge, you cannot apply. And then after learning them, you need to spend time in the performance zone. And so the first thing is to find stages. So for example, for me, right, in speaking better, I had to find the stages like Toastmasters, or even creating my own stages like this, recording lessons and then posting them on to YouTube, or even asking people whether I could share at their particular event. And these deliberate performance zones help you to think a lot more about how you can improve your skills. The important thing is not the using of those skills, but the reflection of those skills. And in reflecting, you can ask yourself, what did I do? What did I do well? And how can I do better? In closing, I want to share this story. Growth involves grief. When I first started speaking, I never expected that I would eventually be speaking at conferences and getting paid to speak. But I did, and I enjoyed it. This picture is what you see of me in 2019 March. And in this picture, you see me significantly fatter and more overweight. This was in October 2019 after I came back from England. I lost everything I knew and I didn't know how to find my feet again. Every week when I spoke at this Toastmasters meeting, it didn't seem like I was engaging anyone. I didn't win prizes, and I definitely didn't feel like I was the best speaker there. But yet, I persevered. And I'm glad to say that now I'm in a better place. You see, the thing about skill building is that it's often a painful process. It's a process of self-doubt where you wonder if you have the skills or if you're growing. It's a process of frustration where you wonder, why is nothing changing? Why do I seem stuck in my plateau? It's a process of grief where you are losing aspects of your own self-confidence as you push yourself further and further out of your own comfort zone. But it's also a process of growth. You're climbing a mountain. And on this mountain, you're not alone. By enlisting the help of your community, your friends, family, and supporters, you are growing. And you are growing your skill better, stronger, and eventually for the good of our world. So today, play the long game. Don't just think of skill building as a solitary event and think of yourself as reaching the peak pinnacle of your skills in a month or a year. It is a long game that involves decades, perhaps, of deep, deliberate practice. Today, what is the thing that you're doing to grow your own skill? Share in the comments below, and I hope to hear from you soon.